Hey guys, George at SoundTraxx here, and on this week's video, we're going to actually dive back into our Operations 101 videos, and this is part 2 of our light displays. And next to me, I have this new installation that I just got done doing for a friend of mine. Now, this is a ScaleTrains SD40-2, it painted out in the Rock Island livery. But what I did to this particular model in order to access all of the lights is I took out the motherboard, as we've done in the past, replaced it with a NIX Trains decoder buddy, and I plugged in a TSU 21-pin NEM8. Now, in doing that, of course, I have to hardwire all the lights to the decoder buddy so that way I can illuminate all of the lights. But I'm using this particular model because on this one I actually did connect all of the different colors of class lights. So on today's Operations 101, we're going to talk about class light displays. So first up, a lot of times people will think about class lights, and they'll see the lights on the front of the locomotive, and they'll think they're nice, neat, pretty little lights. And to a certain extent, they're right. Now, over the years in model railroading, there's been a lot of models that have been released over the years where you will see green on the front and red on the back. And then when the modeler changes direction, the red now goes to what was the front and the green will go to the back. So model railroaders over the years have kind of thought that maybe those colored class lights are there to indicate direction. When the reality is, class lights played a vital role in communication of train practices. The color of the class lights, and this method dates back early on, early past in steam days, but in those days they typically had flags, and then as lights became put into models, they became lights. But you don't usually see them that much on models or diesels of this era, because by this time, most of the railroads had pretty much relegated everything to be classified as an extra. But the class lights played an important role. And so today I'm going to show you this particular train here in front of me, this Missouri Pacific train, and it's waiting for various trains to pass. And so what we can do is we can use the class lights to indicate what the train is. So the first use of the class lights is just flat out extinguished, and like they are right now. And the extinguished class lights would indicate a scheduled train, so a train running on the normal schedule. So when the Missouri Pacific train is here waiting, they're waiting for the scheduled train, which is scheduled to be here, let's say at 12:01 a.m. or whatever the case is. So if the train is scheduled at 12:01 a.m. and the locomotive engineer is sitting here, he knows he cannot pass until that scheduled train passes. And so with the class lights extinguished, this train comes through, we'll say at about 12:10, because they were typically run a little bit late. The engineer here understands that this is the scheduled train he is waiting for. And so therefore, once this train passes, then he is clear to go to his next waiting area. And so that's one of the lines of communication. So the scheduled trains typically did not have any indication on the locomotive, whether it be a class light or a flag. Now, the second indication would be the green class light. So for that, I'm going to go ahead and illuminate our green class light. And you can see the green class light here. Now, the green class light actually indicated that this is the scheduled train, but the green light indicates that there's actually going to be a following section coming behind, about 15 or 20 minutes behind. So the engineer in this train here knows that this is the train he's waiting for, but with the green class lights on it, he knows he has to wait for another section coming on. Now, for argument's sake, let's say this particular scheduled train had 2 following sections. Well, then the green class lights would be illuminated on both of those following sections, or both of those lead 2 sections, Then the third section would have the class lights extinguished, saying this is the scheduled train, this is the end of the procession, you're free to go afterward, or whatever the train order dictates. And so a lot of times you don't really see that being used, especially in this era, because again, as I mentioned, most of the time these were written up as extras. Now the other use, as I mentioned here, is an extra. Now the extra would actually indicate using a clear class light. So we'll extinguish the green and we'll turn on the clear or the white class light. And again, in the steam era, this could be a flag or a light depending on the era that you're modeling. But what this is doing is this is indicating to this train that this is an extra, which normally would be indicated as extra 4793 west, or whatever the case is. And so this locomotive engineer sees the clear class lights, he checks the numbers on the number board, says, aha, this is extra 4793, that's the train I'm waiting for. Once that train goes, then this one can then proceed and continue its scheduled or its train orders as they're indicated on the railroad. So normally, like I said, in this era, most of the time, you're going to see these as extras. Now, I typically model 1978, which is what you're seeing here. Although, to be fair, this locomotive was actually scrapped by 1973, but in my world, one existed because it's just too neat. But this particular locomotive would be sitting here waiting on 1978. We would say extra 1079 and extra 4793 meet at siding, milepost, whatever. And that way they know they're supposed to meet here at this particular crossing or at the siding. And some of that train order may also say, extra 1079, take the siding, and then extra 4793 will run through on the main so that 1079 can then take the main and continue on its track. Now the last indication of class lights is actually a red. So I'm going to go ahead and extinguish the clear, and we're going to turn on the red, and you can see the red class lights here. Now, most of the time these are not used because the red actually is designed to indicate the end of a train. And so normally you would only see a red indication here on the front of a locomotive or on the end of a locomotive if the locomotive is pushing against a train, and that's using the red class lights to indicate the rear of the train. Or, for example, if they're doing a switching move and they need to do a shoving down a couple of miles, they may put red lenses in there. But normally they would have the headlight on and then dim the headlight as the way to indicate what the train is actually doing. But red typically would indicate the rear of the train. Now, I know Conrail had the red class lights there, but a lot of times they would push the trains up their grade, especially with the heavy coal trains. Now, a lot of times, especially in early diesel and steam era, they wouldn't push against the wooden cabooses. They would actually cut in front of the caboose, therefore rendering the red class lights to be virtually irrelevant because they'd have the caboose, which would display the red light or the red flag indicating the end of the train. But as the cabooses got better and they got steel cabooses, things like that, they started getting them in such a way that they were rated to be able to be pushed against pushing a train for a helper, for example, up the grade. And so a lot of times then that red light may be indicated on there. But like I said, most of the time you're hardly ever going to see the red class lights. So it's up to you when you're wiring up and installing your decoder how you want to take advantage of it. Now, one of the things I will say to Scale Train's credit is they've actually found a way to give us the lights here that allows us to illuminate all three colors of the class lights, including extinguished. But the downside is they hide it behind a secondary processor that until they give us the code to be able to talk to it, it's not really a standard now, is it? It's following their own proprietary protocol. So they give you this 21-pin decoder, but then they hide a lot of the lights behind this 21-pin, which makes it virtually impossible to be able to do things like this, which is why on this model I installed a decoder buddy. So during this video, you've actually been able to see a couple of the run-by examples showing the different uses of class lights. And so now that you've been a little bit more informed on the uses of a class light, now you can run your railroads just that little bit more prototypically, which is what we all strive to do, especially when we spend so much time building our scenery and things like that. So with that, we'll go ahead and conclude this second installment of Operations 101, talking about the lights and light displays. So look forward for more Operations 101 videos as we go and show you prototypical railroad operations and how you can recreate that on your railroad using SoundTraxx products. So guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe to this video, and also make sure you comment down there. Ask us questions. We'll be happy to help answer. But if you don't want to be on the public forum, be sure to send us an email to support@soundtraxx.com, as we're always willing and able to help you anytime you need it. So guys, that's all I've got for this time. We'll see you next time.